Christophe, I think we should start.
Okay. Yeah.
Perfect. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining this fourth Digital Charter webinar. You know, from the agenda, we're going to talk about standards and interoperability. If someone cannot hear well or has any problem, you can use the chat, and we'll try to help you through the chat. First of all, before giving the floor to Christophe, I would like to remind that this webinar is part of the Green Digital Charter activities, and it's part of this effort that we have in EUROCITIES and with all these 50 cities that have signed the charter to really network cities and exchange on projects and ideas, how to deploy ICT, how to become smarter, how to involve citizens, etc. And standards and interoperability is obviously one of the needs for cities. How do we advance with that? Thank you both, Christophe, who I want to remind is also the chair of the working group on standards and interoperability we have in EUROCITIES. So Omar for joining us today and being so generous to the presentations they have prepared. One thing I want to add about GDC, we also organize trainings, but more important, work shadowing visits, and I would like to ask you to go and visit the GDC site and see the details, because the idea is that we are offering to pay cities traveling to other cities so that they can discuss, see projects, and see how colleagues from other cities work and deal with maybe the same challenges or ideas. This is the second webinar for standards. As we're working very closely with other projects as well, with CITYkeys, with Espresso, standards indicators. I think we're all trying to build this a system of stakeholders, experts, cities that are very interested in this topic. And I'd like to give the floor to Christophe and start this webinar. Thank you all for joining. Thanks, Christophe and Omar. The floor is yours.
Hello. Thank you for your introduction. First of all, I would like to present the agenda. I don't know if you can hear me now.
Clear and loud.
Thank you, Nikolaos. So the introduction from Nikolaos, you already heard it. And I would like to go back on the conclusions of the last working group meeting we ran in April. We wanted there to align the working group objectives on the Commons priorities, how to collaborate more specifically with EU standardization bodies and specifically with ETSI. For ones who don't know about ETSI, it's a European Telecommunications Standardization Institute. And the third point would be about semantic interoperability, a very important topic we spoke about in REN, and I think which would be really relevant for us as a city agency. So on the working group objectives, an update on CITYkeys standardization process. As you may know, CITYkeys is KPI, so key performance indicators about cities. And we will speak about it with Nikolaos, who is in charge of this project for EUROCITIES. And then I will leave the floor to Omar Elloumi, who is the chairman of 1M2M project for ETSI, and speak very quickly and very briefly about the next step in the Knowledge Society Forum meeting, which will be held in Tampere in October. And you will have the opportunity then to ask questions, and we will try to answer. So, first of all, I would like to remind this important communication from the Commission, which is ICT standardization priorities for the digital single market. Because this, under the focus, European Commission will bring this topic during the next years, and a priority for the digital single market in order to break the silos we already encounter in our cities. Communication sets out a comprehensive, strategic, and to standardization for priority ICT technologies that are critical to the completion of the digital single market. So the goal is to ensure that ICT-related standards are set in a way that is more responsive to policy needs, agile, open, and more stringent to research innovation, better up, and thus that they ultimately have more impact for the wider European economy as it transforms into a digital one. First, I would like to specifically underline a third of the economy rely on digital technologies. That's something which is really transversal. Value of digital system increasingly derived from cross-sector application, data conversion. So it's a way to define a transversal definition of standardization will help us to break silos. It's also another way to say this. And it's essential to first clearly map all relevant standards. That's something we already started from the beginning of this working group in January of there are bodies and organizations involved in standards or technical specification settings all over the world. That's also something we could see during especially Espresso webinars. European work on standardization can't be viewed in isolation. So, okay. First, how we like to align working group objectives on the Commission's priorities. When we started the working group in January, we identified main areas of activities to work on standardization issues. First of all was smart grids and smart metering. Second one was technologies and services for smart and efficient energy use. The third was ICT environmental impact, and the fourth one was about ICE intelligent transport systems. We can see on the European definition in this figure is that on this first point it was also identified as the main project topic. The second one because it was also to smart energy, and the about ETS was also identified by the Commission. XE Health, we already the good areas of activity. So, I said of this presentation, it should be interesting and very relevant for us to collaborate more with EU standardization bodies. If we have a main standardization body, which is ETSI. I spoke before, ETSI, European Telecommunication Standard Institute. And the first example we would like to take is this example of CITYkeys. CITYkeys is a subversion in the European Horizon 2020 project. And we decided in June this year to create a new technical body, which is called SDMC, as Sustainable Digital Multi-Service for Cities. And this technical body will be in charge to, among other topics, to get technical specification from the CITYkeys project KPIs. So the objective is to bring the CITYkeys parameters the CITYkeys KPIs to be part of technical specification, so it will be easier to deploy and develop those indicators for every European cities. Perhaps, Nikolaos, you should speak about the required datasets on the CITYkeys project
Yeah, thank you very much, Christophe. I will try to keep it short. First of all, it's of course we're very glad that ETSI has enough CITYkeys and also that many cities in Europe are trying to adopt and experiment and see how the KPIs work and how the datasets can be gathered. And for us, as EuroCities, that's made the most important thing, that even if cities are really advanced or front runners by playing around with tools like CITYkeys, they can only see how they can deal with these challenges like open data, real-time data sets, or even ideas that you work with, Christophe, in the working group, the Semantics. So what we do if we want to reuse the data from one city to the other, etc. Now, I would like to say also, usually just one comment. When we are talking about indicators of a city that is responsive and is using indicators just to see emergency situations like this, and I think this is a very narrow point of view, very narrow angle to see at indicators, because as the way we work in CITYkeys and EuroCities is that we think that indicators might be a really more advanced tool for cities. Even they can use indicators for procurement, to select projects, to design projects. Another important thing to communicate projects to their citizens or the various stakeholders. Not only these top-down tools that we usually see that tools providers are talking about, but I think it can be a good decision-making tool or a very good communication tool that cities can use. It can also advance our transparency, because when the administration and the citizens are discussing about a project, use some jointly agreed, mutually agreed indicators, we can be sure that we are talking about the same thing. So that's why we believe very much in how indicators can be adopted for cities, how they can be used, and also how they can be a nice excuse to explore all these other topics, like do we gather data, how do we keep them updated, we build open frameworks, interoperable frameworks, etc., etc. So that's why it's important, and of course we're going to work with this a lot in the future.
Thank you. So, a very important topic we spoke about during the meeting in Rennes was the the way to reuse existing legacy systems for cities. For example, in Bordeaux, we have a system of traffic regulation, which is called Gertrude, and which is on the older technologies, but we like to deploy it more in the country, and we would like to keep it for the next evolutions of the system. And in order to reuse such systems and to add other new ones from IoT technologies, for example, we need to bring a common middleware or an abstract layer, in fact, to bring all these data from different systems and to bring the data center to create a data set. So it's a way to show that working on stars and interoperability will allow communities to find concrete and practical solutions, and it's always a way to show that this work helps communities to avoid vendors lock-in and to save money when we can reuse existing systems. A concept in Bordeaux is the development for the moment. It's an open platform for semantic management of smart cities based on one M2M, and it will be demonstrated during the next ETSI M2 workshop in November. You can think if you want more information. But to explain a bit more this project, it's about borders of city buildings, which are managed for them with an old system, and we would like to add new ones with IoT technologies and to bring them together to a whole vision of management for every building of the city. So that's a concrete example of what we should be able to do with such technologies. But now I will leave the floor to Omar Elloumi, who is the chairman, as I said, of 1M2M project in ETSI.
Thank you, Christophe. Thank you, Nikolaos, for the invitation. Thanks, Edith, for the practical help. Can I make myself presenter now?
You carry your screen if you want. You have you need to share your screen. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So let me put in presentation mode. So my name is Omar Elloumi. I work for Nokia, based in Paris, and I happen to be the technical planner of 1M2M. In my presentation, I will tell you a bit about 1M2M. I think I will skip this second part of my presentation about technology trends, but all of them would be applicable, those trends, for architects or product managers or people who are looking to deploy smart cities, at least in my understanding. If you want more information, there is a webinar recorded, and I speak about those trends more in depth. Then I will try to speak a little bit about the role of 1M2M in smart cities. This is based on some recent discussion to collect requirements from real cities, and we are trying to build a blueprint for smart city deployment taking into account operational requirements. Very short takeaway. So what's 1M2M? 1M2M is a partnership project. The work really started in ETSI, a group called ETSI Machine to Machine. We decided to become more global project. Becoming more global project, we decided to start a partnership project For instance, we have people from Atis and TA in the US. We have recently TSDSI, which is in India, joined our partnership project. And they have a project called 100 Cities project, and in the first phase they are working on the of roughly a third of that. So they have a big initiative which is government driven for smart cities. But we have other partners, and all those partners bring a total number of 200 members. Our members range from device manufacturers, for Intera Wireless, all the way to the system integrators and application developers. For we have IBM, we have LG Electronics, Samsung, to name a few. So what we do, we specify. So we develop technical specifications. Technical specifications are about the middleware that sits between the network and when I say the network and the application, it could be the cloud, it could be the gateway, it could be the device, because we believe that IoT is a largely distributed system, meaning that intelligence could reside anywhere in the system, be it in the device, the gateways, or the cloud. We source per se in one M2M. However, we firmly believe in the role of open source in expediting time to market and helping interoperability. Some members have given open source applications, for instance in Eclipse, but there are other open source implementations. So this is a recap. So we build a software layer. Actually, we write the specification for the software layer. We have decided to use RESTful APIs. And RESTful is very simple paradigm. It's everything is about resources. Resources, you can think about these resources are digital representation of the physical world in the cloud. And you can create resources, update resources, delete resources, retrieve resources. And this is what made the World Wide Web scale. So this is we are using this approach. Our work has been based on use cases. So we for which we take use cases, describe them, then build requirements, derive an architecture, and specify protocols. And interoperability is an important aspect. So we had 2 interop events where more than 30 vendors were able to show interoperability in addition to some showcases. So our vision is really to move from the left-hand side where you have one device, one network, one application. This is about initial deployments of M2M and IoT. Right-hand side of the picture where multiple applications, common service layer, common networks, and common devices. And the common service layer groups all the functions which are needed for multiple applications and expose them to the application by means of APIs. The common service layer will have presentations of the things from the physical world and expose them subject to access rights and policies. In terms of architecture, what we specify interfaces. So AE stands for the application entities. So the left-hand side you have the device. The middle side is the gateways, and at the right-hand side you have the cloud infrastructure. It's all about getting the application to communicate with each other by means of the CSE, which is the common service entity, which is the middleware using the network. I will show you in one of my next slides the functions which are a part of the common service layer. So for registration, you can discover resources. These are representation of either data or devices. We post security, applications, data management, and so on and so forth. Device management happens to be a very, very important feature. For instance, if we are speaking about smart metering and smart grids, smart meters today are installed, and they plan to deploy them for 25 to 30 years. And if you do so, you don't expect the device to run the same version of software, firmware. You have to have a mechanism in order to be able to upgrade the device, so the software, the firmware, the credentials, the security algorithms, as an example. We start to see a strong implementation base. As you know, the large-scale pilots of the European Commission, them is about smart cities, and they mentioned 1M2M as potential standards, which is recommended for possible use. Beyond that, one to the left-hand side is 1M2M open source implementation pushed by last CNRS into Toulouse. You can deploy it. The open source implementation, for instance, there is one by Cisco in Linux Foundation, and it's called IoTDM and Open Daylight. Examples of companies who implemented the 1M2M specifications, and we have already organized 2 interop events. Interop events are about different equipment could be servers, gateway devices, equipment together, and they show interoperability between their equipment. I think Christophe and Nikolaos spoke about standards and standards proliferation, and it's true. Standard IoT and landscape is very complex. In 1M2M, we work with a certain number of standards organizations. For instance, we are using protocols from IETF. For the management, we use protocols for Open Mobile Lines. EM is driving the binding of 1M2M specification to a protocol called MQTT specified in OASIS. And we have people like Samsung and LG Electronic and Qualcomm who are driving interoperability specifications, for instance, with All-SCENE and Open Interconnect Consortium. Those are IP-based proximity networks. And we are trying to stick to our mission while building interoperability with other specifications or using protocols from other standards organizations. I will skip those slides. I think you can read offline, or if you have questions, I will answer to those questions and go directly to the smart cities part. This slide is based on some discussions I had with Martin Serra from University of Surrey. I think right now what we are seeing is we are seeing cities evolving from this vertical deployments to more horizontal deployments, and we get always the requirements that we now should think about how we make sure those different deployments can exchange data between themselves, which is shown in the left-hand side. We are building a city. There are 4 steps. I think you have to build a vision because every city is unique. Every city will have a starting point with a certain number of use cases. But once you build the vision, you start deploying those sensors or actuators. You need to have a view on what's going on, which is the dashboards. And the 4th step, which is expand the vision, integrate, and innovate. And I will say a few words about those challenges. Skipping this. In terms of integration, and I think you say something about this, the problem is that when you start with smart city, you start with a certain number of use cases. But over time, you will try to expand your smart city deployment to a larger number of use cases. And if you integrate by means of point-to-point, which means you understand each other data models and you try to exchange information, becomes very, very difficult because it's the n-square problem. Then there are the monoculture approach, which means you bring someone who has enough expertise to build the smart city, and he will take care of integration. But the problem is you find yourself in a lock-in situation. What I try to push in one M2M is an open approach based on open standards, interoperability, also recognizing the role of open source. This open approach is data exchange between applications across domains, the same networks. We have also provisions to enhance sharing the data by means of semantic interoperability. We decided to opt for the notion of metadata, which is you have the data and you have certain attributes of the data which describes what it is about, how can I use the data, and discover the data. This work, we are in the process of releasing a white paper about this particular piece of work in conjunction with the W3C and IEEE. An explanation of it means, so the common service layer is about representations, digital representation of things. So we can have data, and the metadata will be about the semantic descriptions according to ontologies, about other things like digital right management or who can consume the data. Semantic is our difficult area because it comes to us from university and research. I think there is a lot of benefits, but the problem of semantic is how do I make sure that the different vendors adopt this semantic approach? How do I educate the engineers in order to build the ontologies? Because there are not so many engineers who are up to speed with technology. Value of semantic is when the number of applications goes up and when you have a need to integrate those applications. There might be enough investment to bring your system up to speed with semantics, but over time it will be less costly. In terms of innovation, what we see in IoT in general, not only for smart cities, typically you have a number of applications, we call them the killer applications. But if your IoT or smart city experience to be fruitful, I think you have to open the floor for open developments of new applications. This is what we call the long tail. The SMEs, the garage developers, who want not only access your APIs, but access your data. So the message of this slide, it's not only about the APIs that you would expose, but the access to a certain data. And when we say access to data, it doesn't that it's free lunch for everyone to access all the data. That means to mix and match data and data with access control policy, meaning that data that only authorized stakeholders can access to. But that is so when you expose to application developers, you have to expose both. This is an example of operational deployment of smart city in Busan. What they use the one M2M platform is to aggregate the data from different sources. Then they use the platform in order to expose to different application developers, which on their own expose to citizens via smart or PC applications. I try to finish in 6 or 7 minutes. This slide is about a summary of requirements that I've been working on. I try to summarize those requirements, the most important ones. IoT-enabled smart cities. And those are based on my own discussions with few cities. So first of all, I think the cities that I've been working on with are telling me that we acknowledge this horizontal platform as a way to obtain new deployments. So they have already existing deployments. None of the city I spoke to, they don't have existing deployments. All of them have existing deployments. They acknowledge this horizontal approach as the way forward. Their requirement is that we should not disrupt existing vertical deployments, but to seek opportunities for integration path, which means building some adapters in order to make sure the data is collected and we can make use of those data and even share the data with other applications. We also see from those discussions already in cities, they have different departments have done their own procurement of vertical deployments. It seems some cities are appointing officers who coordinate between the different departments within the city to ensure that this horizontal approach and framework can actually take place. The environment is being participatory and innovative. Which means, of course, surveys for the citizens, but also exposing APIs, add access to open data, and if possible, semantically structured data, because that's a faster path to analyze data. A last requirement is about security and device management. They go hand in hand because deployments are about collecting the data, but now there is more and more concerns about securities, and so the recent project take security as an upfront requirement. Device management allows you to upgrade the security, so they are very related. There are few examples. For instance, there are two researchers in Spain who demonstrated that the smart metering infrastructure could be hacked because there are issues, and they discovered those issues. Now, this slide is about a possible blueprint for a smart city deployment. So the starting point will be those vertical deployments. Those are the existing deployments. So typically, what you could do is you build an adapter. We advocate for separation in a smart city architecture between a front end. So front end is part of your data center, and when I say your data center, it could be your own data centers or any of the cloud data centers like Amazon or Orange Business Service or whatever. So the front end will be the entity facing the field domain devices and the gateways. Its scaling is different from the backend, because the backend is what you will use in order to store the data, enrich the data, replicate the data, etc. So they scale completely different. The front end scales for a massive number of connections, to deal with all the protocol conversions. We did a study, so I come from the ICT industry, but we did a study on, and we discovered a large number of protocols that could be used for street light automation or smart water management. Front end will be the place where you do all this protocol conversion, and that's why I say it should scale differently from the backend, which is only about the storage of the data and the processing of the data. So now at the bottom you will see a bunch of protocols. For instance, we came across a protocol called Talk for street light management, or Wix DNP for water management. You need to build the protocol converters, either the gateway or at the front end. You collect the data, you put it in the smart city backend, which is, as I said, more optimized for storage, and put the data in a repository, and you expose by means of APIs. Towards the north of, or the upper part of the slides, you have dashboards, your application, your third-party applications, and analytics. and have here represented where one M2M could provide value. So we position ourselves as the international standards for data collection, data management. They don't deal ourselves with how the data gets stored, which is more this part of the slide. IoT systems, when you speak about requirements, there is a requirement for the value for a sensor. This term history of the data, the longer term, over probably a few months or even few years. That's what you provide by means of the open data approach. And the adapters which can be built. For instance, if you are familiar with Fiber initiatives, so we see Fiber as more a framework for this broker functionality, which allows for communication between the different software building blocks, and also for the smart city backend as well, which here that one M2M doesn't deal with. We'll skip the slide and this last slide. So in one M2M, what we recognize is that every city is unique. I think this is absolutely clear. On the other hand, we think that an horizontal platform could address different city needs. I think it's very important for a city to build a vision, which is based on the initial set of use cases. You spoke about the KPIs. We think that architecture should be future-proof, should leverage cross-sector applications using open standards. Integration of existing deployments is key, but it should not be disrupting those existing deployments. Last thing, we should stimulate and cultivate a collaborative culture for innovation. I will stop here, but you have a full set of slides if you have any further questions. Christophe?
So now, if you have questions, we will be very happy to try to answer you.
For questions, you can either write in the chat, and I will read the question and give the floor to someone who wants to answer. And you can also use the feature next to your name in the participants tab of a hand. You can raise your hand, and as soon as I see that raise your hand, I will give you the floor. So don't need to participate. Thanks. So I have a question from Bart Rousseau from the city of Ghent in the chat. He says, I quote, "I like the statement about semantic integration being cheaper than technical integration. Do you have figures about that?"
Thank you for the question, and I think I know Bart Rousseau for a long time. We have this figure. It's coming from PwC, but we don't have we don't have measures of how much benefits or return on investments of the semantic integration.
Omar, you don't have some figures from Busan, for example? You spoke about Busan, which was deploying the whole system.
I believe so. I think this is a difficult question, but I believe that for the city of Busan, they deployed one M2M release 1, which provided some initial semantic support, not based on release 2. I think we have the full semantic support in release 2. To be honest, if you have 4 type applications that you are going to deploy and you want to integrate them, you don't need semantics. I think we can see it very clearly in this slide. Because what you do is you integrate manually. You share the data models for each application, and you figure out how you exchange the data. With semantics, the biggest problem is that IT engineers are not yet up to speed with semantics. We did some work in the context of the European Commission, and we came across 3 issues, 3 roadblocks for large-scale deployments of semantic in the IoT domain. First, the first one is convincing the industry stakeholders. If you speak to Schneider Electric, etc., there is still skepticism about semantics. Sometimes they perceive semantic as potentially a threat for their business. Very often they think about semantic as free range for everyone to consume their data. And that's not true. You can still have semantics, you can still have an open data, but you can still have other data sets which are managed according to access rights and condition. The second one is about this engineering and the fact that we don't have enough engineers who are up to speed with the technology. It took me 6 months to get up to speed, so I had to work on this for 6 months. And so what I suggested at the time to the Commission is to have, if possible, have an education process or an education approach to make sure that the engineers up to speed, because the truth is that semantics remains at universities. Not that we see that the university have managed to make a good job when working with universities, for instance, working with the cities, but people who are delivering the system, etc., they are not there yet. And the third problem is when you speak about semantics, you need to speak about ontologies, and ontology being the relation of a knowledge in a certain domain. It's the concepts and the relationships between the concepts. You need to create the framework and the meetings where you build consensus about those ontologies.
Just I wanted to add just one point about our project in Bordeaux. I say clearly that we will be able to economy 40 million euros. We already expensed to build the SCADA for the boilers. So that's something which is very interesting for the cities.
Omar, two questions that have arrived through the chat. So the first one is if there is any one M2M certification process for smart city platforms, and the one, from your experience, how can a city choose between making evolution of existing system, building a new system, and integration of the old system?
Let me start with the first. I'm not sure I understand the second, but let me start with the first very quickly. We don't have a certification process for pertaining to smart cities. We are in the process of building a certification process for devices and gateways based on 1 M2M technology. I think the door is not closed if we come across requirements which are city-specific requirements, and if we can have support from cities. The door is certainly not closed. We would love to work on that. Interop events, we have already interoperability events. We are almost close to building a certification program, and welcome collaboration if you think this would make sense for you. For a smart city specific certification. For the second question, can you repeat, because I'm not sure I
Yeah, the second question is it came from Mathieu Clavier from Nantes, and it's how to choose between making evolution of existing system, keep your system and improve it, or build a new system and try to integrate the existing old system.
So, okay. Let's go back to this slide.
The question is how to choose. I mean, if there is a way, or understand the question.
So, is that most existing systems have been deployed for a particular use case, street light. The platform, if you have a platform, it's very vertically integrated approach. Usually those approaches have are not the best way to build an horizontal approach. So if you try to extend, I think you end up with having very, very complex design. That's, in my mind, that's a problem of existing deployments. On the other hand, those existing deployments, you can quickly integrate them, because you can either at the node of the cloud application, you can make sure that they expose by building some adapters, and you can integrate them in a platform that allows one integration that has been designed from the ground up for integration of different applications, sharing the data among different verticals. So, my current knowledge, I would say, existing systems, if they are vertically integrated systems, there's not much you can do except exposing the data on the northbound of their system. It's going to be very, very hard to adapt them to become horizontal platforms.
Okay, that I see in the chat again, it connects to the previous one about semantics, again from Bart, and is what do you think EUROCITES could do to improve accessibility to semantics to the engineers? So a network like EUROCITES or a platform like EUROCITES.
I think if you one way is to have an education program. That would be very useful. An education program, it can be massive online courses. It can be via MOOC. That's one thing. It's not enough. You have to give them access to a real platform. After going through the lessons, they can experiment. They can program. They can do requests, because, for instance, there is a language called Sparkle. You can probably make some data available for them, and to show them what's the benefit. And showing the benefit means they have to program something, and they use real data. So education, maybe workshops, and I think it has to be about running code as well, because they have to experiment.
Omar, I don't see any other questions in the chat or any hands raised. So it's just 12. I think, Christophe, you would like to wrap up and close the webinar?
Thank you. Just say that the next step will be now in Tampere for the KSF members, the EUROCITES KSF members, and I hope we will have some practical examples to present, some figures to make sense for this possible semantic interoperability solutions. And I would like to thank Omar for this presentation, very brilliant presentation, and for EUROCITES for the organization. So goodbye, and see you on the next webinar, I hope.
For sure, another webinar for that, Christophe.
Okay, Nikolaos. So Have a day, and I say you goodbye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye bye.